This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
In a world of capes and lunatics, gods and monsters, there are those that protect us and protect reality, or protect us from reality. They are the agents of Sword, and this is Nuff Said. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Thank you for being here, Mozz. And of course, joining us, special guest, Epsilon 11 Commander. You did not unmute yourself, Epsilon 11 Commander.
Hello, I am Epsilon 11 Commander, designated Nine-Tailed Fox Commander. How are you?
Pleasure to meet you. Okay, now we're going to do the other intro. It's okay. Tonight we are discussing WandaVision. It's Wanda. It's Vision. They really want to be your friends. We know the good times never end. Okay, maybe that was just for me. But yeah, we get a great intro here. We get a nice 60s theme intro. Ba 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 ba. WandaVision. We get to see a lot of fun 70s things. We see Vision reading a book on pregnancy. And what's interesting to me in this is that after this, well, actually, there's two things interesting. One is he builds the swing set and then it all collapses, which, you know, immediately you should say, well, as a machine, shouldn't he be perfect at building it? But then you realize it's all just a house of cards. And it collapses in on itself like a house of M. But when we get to the moment with the doctor, and we have the doctor and, you know, assessing Wanda's pregnancy and the Vision into it, the Vision has a sense of time. He knows that even though there is clearly meant to be a time jump, he understands the world has changed. He understands this is not correct. And it does appear to be that there is this conflict we're seeing with Wanda and her efforts to push back on Vision waking up, if you will.
Right. What if this is all sort of created by her own mind, then maybe Vision in this reality represents the pieces of her subconscious that don't want this and are fighting back against this. And this is her fighting against her own mind to either let this happen or to stop this from happening. And this is the piece of her mind that doesn't want it to happen.
I mean, that's a real possibility. What we always get in this is that this is all, we're just starting into this. We know it's something, but we don't know what the something is yet. And that is both what's beautiful and what's frustrating about it, because we know there's more to what we're seeing than what we've seen, but we also know that from what we've seen, there is something else going on, and it has to have a deeper meaning.
Right.
We have the Hydra Soak commercial in this one.
Which is interesting because they're like notorious for using mind control techniques to make super soldiers. They did it with, Winter Soldier. So, she grew up, Wanda grew up in Sokovia, right? She grew up outside of the Western world, right?
Well, yeah, she grew up in Sokovia, in the
So
Eastern
what
Bloc.
if these sitcoms were what she grew up on watching and what they fed her to sort of indoctrinate her into being able to penetrate the West? So this is what they're using to placate her mind or give her room to play or something, that Hydra is behind this world that's been constructed.
I mean, I don't think we have to go full not Westworld, but a Red Room on it.
Okay.
Where we're training her to infiltrate. She was just a kid from Sokovia.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I mean, she was experimented on by Hydra, which of course is why Hydra and Strucker both are part of it. But at the same time, I think that it's an interesting thing to speak about mind control, because that was actually when they were in the framework. Which, that's the thing. I have to think we're going to get some kind of reference to the framework in this. I think that the way that they're establishing things,
or it's completely supernatural. They're either
that's the thing. But this is what I have to say. The framework was supernatural.
Oh, okay.
In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it was the Darkhold that was opening the doors to the supernatural, utilizing these scientists. And it's that brilliant thing that, the Darkhold is just a tome meant to bring Chthon into the world. It doesn't care if you're a magic user or a scientist. It knows that you're just curious about what's in the book. And it's going to awaken your mind in the way you can comprehend it. And when we get into, of course, what is basically the central premise of the Marvel Universe, that science is magic. That there is not one and the other. It is just one continuity. That the mind is open to altering reality, and reality is open to altering the mind. So, in this, we do see a lot of things. One thing that was pointed out to me in this by Phil, actually, was that we have never seen the Vision use super speed before. In this, we see him run really, really fast. We've never seen him do that before. We've seen him fly.
Right, but just like the title sequence is indicative that they have to stick to certain conventions, they're slave to certain conventions for the rest of this reality to be able to be held up enough for you to interact with it. Certain conventions need to be held to, like the title sequence and building of the swing set poorly, which he wouldn't do. And here's another example. It's just he has to go by what the kind of world they're in.
Yeah, but I think that there is something to be said in the fact that his human form, actually, interesting enough, the hairstyle looks a lot like the hairstyle for the X Universe's Quicksilver.
Huh. Oh. So yeah, I guess it's like her mind bleeding things into each other, Yeah.
I mean, that's the idea, that maybe there is something where in her rebuilding of Vision, she's just... That's the thing. And this is where... I really want to know what they're in. And since, Phil pointed out to me the Pleasant Hill connection of the prison for superhuman beings, where basically people's realities were rewritten to make them able to be contained in a small town, that really intrigues me here, especially if we go into the idea of the new initials of SWORD being the Sentient Weapons Observation and something Directorate.
What was it before?
Well, it's supposed to be the Sentient World Observation and Observation and Reconnaissance Directorate. That it went from Sentient World to Sentient Weapon completely changes its dynamic to where it's not actually arguably a space organization. That SWORD could be the organization that is in charge of looking at these Omega level threats, like your Hulks, like your Abominations, that really are hard to contain. And then you think about all the other ones that are out there, your Baron Mordus, your ones we haven't even met yet, like Diablo the Alchemist, or Molecule Men, and all of these kind of creatures that we have in our Fantastic Four and X-Men universes that would be really hard to just put into the raft. You might be able to put a Patsy Walker in the raft, but, they had to build an entire building to hold Blonsky. It was called the Icebox, and he was like the one prisoner there. But if you could put them into the framework, into this sort of mind control alternate reality where you can rewrite their realities, and contain
a dangerous weapon.
A dangerous living weapon. Because as I always said, yes, Epsilon 11 Commander, you're breaking up.
What if there are criminals in there?
Well,
Everyone in there might be a criminal or a sentient weapon.
Well, exactly.
Oh.
I think that's what it is, Epsilon. I think that what it is sentient weapons. And this is my favorite thing about, everyone always wants to create the perfect living weapon, but no one ever thinks what happens when that living weapon decides to start pointing itself and shooting itself.
Right, so that's the reason nobody is using their powers against each other. They've got this sort of feeble truce.
No, it's that they can't use their powers because they're not in the real world.
No, but Wanda can use her powers if this is in fact not in Wanda's head, and this is someplace that other sentient weapons are held. That this is in the real world, so to speak, not an imaginary version of Wanda. Then how come she's able to use her powers?
Well,
it could be because maybe she built this world, or maybe she's like the one in control, or maybe she took over the place and now she has all the power. She might have been too powerful to be contained, so maybe she took over it.
So she went to hell and took the devil's job? Is that
I mean, arguably, it's interesting when you actually look at the Pleasant Hill storyline. At its core was what essentially a sentient cosmic cube. This was actually the Red Skull's cosmic cube that after it had been shattered and so many times it actually eventually formed itself into a sentient being. And it was this little girl. And they found that they could use the little girl and talk to the little girl to essentially manipulate her into creating this world. So it is entirely possible that Wanda created this world for Sword. They're saying, we need someone that can control it from the inside. And because of your powers, we think that you might be resistant to what the Darkhold can do or what have you. And then once they're in there, suddenly everything starts to go down and they can't control who's going in and out of Pleasant Hill. They can't control it anymore. And they think someone is doing this to Wanda when Wanda is the one doing it to herself. Or maybe not. I'm not sure. But that's the question, and that's what that's the mystery we're unearthing. Recently, Elizabeth Olsen, in an interview, made the point that this show might not actually have a villain. Where she said, everyone was wondering who's the villain of it, and but what people may not be considering is that there may not be a villain at all. That everyone is just trying to do their best in this world.
Or perhaps this is an exercise to create that villain.
That's a possibility as well. What Wanda is going to become from this is the question. And like I said, the idea of the sentient weapon really intrigues me. Because, as I say, that changes the perspective of Sword. Because, of course, everyone, when they see Nick Fury and the Skrulls on the space station, oh yeah, finally, Sword, the space shield. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, that's a thing. That in the comic books, that space shield is called Sword. But that doesn't necessarily have to be what this shield is, or what this sword is. And this sword may be something completely different. This sword might be more akin to essentially the prison branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. That these are the people that are in charge of containing these threats. The threats that, if you recall from the old Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, they had people that were locked up. These were early superpowered beings that they came across. And they had some that had some interesting powers. They had Angar the Screamer. They had some people with kind of lame powers, but they had some people who had real superpowers before the Inhumans, before anything was happening in that universe, that S.H.I.E.L.D. captured and locked away. I always point out the fact that they call out Department H early on in Canada, early on in the clairvoyant stories, because the person that they came across was this guy who they thought could predict the future. Turned out that was a ruse, but we don't know what else Department H was up to. So, and that's why I always say, I think that everyone's saying, oh, is this how they're going to introduce mutants? It's like, I think that mutants were already introduced. We just didn't know we were looking at them. That there are people that we have seen as an example, we've already seen Crusher Creel, the Absorbing Man, with no history of his powers on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So there are these people that have these powers that we don't know what they're going to be or what they're doing yet. And maybe they're Inhumans. Maybe Crusher Creel was in fact empowered by Loki, and that's something we're going to get in the Loki series. It's going to show him going back in time, slipping a Mickey into Crusher Creel's drink, just to cause trouble.
It
would be fun. It would be a great, nice circle for them to create when they do that story of Loki traveling through space and time, as a being outside of where he's supposed to be in what chronological history is supposed to be. But, once people start inventing time travel, suddenly all of time gets messed up. And that's why you have to have time.
Anything's possible.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
who do you think the stork was?
Oh, well, it's an interesting thing about storks. And I forgot to I believe, and it's an interesting question here. The legend of the stork both bringing children into the world. There are parallel legends about storks being psychopomps, beings that take people to the land of the dead. And I wonder if that is, yes, of course, it's an interesting idea, but I think that could also be an implication that maybe people here are dead or in a death-like state, because of course we know the Vision is dead. But I also think that there's a possibility that the stork is there to show that Wanda is not in as much control as she thinks she is. Which goes into the idea of the children. Now.
Or is it, again, her playing out like, a comedy trope? Oh, get away, and it's not going away, and it keeps on, it's going to mess up. And then towards the end, you have those close call moments.
You have, so there's a couple interesting things here. Now, if you're a fan of Bewitched, you will recall that there was a very good episode where when Samantha was pregnant, her powers got a little glitchy. And there was one where every time she had a craving, the food would show up. And then Dr. Bombay comes, fixes it so no longer does the food come to her. Now she goes to the food. So, so she just keeps on blinking out because she winds up thinking about, going to Dodger Stadium and getting a hot dog with sauerkraut. It's a fun episode. But we see in this the idea that, she can't seem to control her powers, and her powers are affecting everything and everyone. When Geraldine comes in later, she makes the point that, all the pipes in my apartment just burst. Just as they did when she said, I think my water broke. But But I think the idea here is that she is not in as much control of this universe as she thinks she is. She has
ways, maybe more so, like the seismic wave of whatever happened to her obviously happened to the whole town. Everybody had leaks, and everybody knew what it was, and everybody was. What was interesting is that guy with the mustache, when the lights go out, and he's like, "Oh, thank God." Like, he has really had this sense like, oh, they're not watching right now. Like Prisoners of War, where the guy watching the gate goes away for a second. It's like, oh, I can relax for a second,
well, no, that was just a joke that he didn't want to have to tell his wife that the earrings made her.
I know, but I felt like they were trying to make that that was
make it a little deeper.
Show, but the actor himself was also, it was like a double meaning kind of thing, however you wanted to see it.
Well, yeah, and I believe that's Johnson. I think his name is Pete Johnson, and he actually, he is very much a sad sack character in this, very dejected. If they do the thing where it's like, oh, this is who they were in the real world, he like might be the Abomination. I don't know. But there is an idea here that, as I said, if we want to go kind of crazy in this and look at the Darkhold as the inspiration for a lot of technological jumps that S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to make in the intervening years between the snap and when everyone came back, the framework, the LMDs, etc. Now, in the comic books, the Darkhold is there to bring about the rise of Chiton. It is possible that a being like Mephisto, if he has lost bits of himself, or perhaps in this case, to keep it in the MCU, maybe the Infinity Stones are trying to reform themselves and are using the power of the Darkhold to sort of bring themselves back into existence. And in this case, Wiccan and Speed become parts of that. Parts of those stones now reformed, the Tesseract and the Reality Stone, based on what their powers are. And then you maybe even have in that the idea that you also have the Vision as the Mind Stone already reformed in this, and Wanda is mostly appearing as the Time Stone in this, because most of her powers seem to be moving things back and forth in time. We see that when she's dealing with the turkey in the first or the chicken in the first episode, where first it's burnt and then it turns back into eggs. I'm trying to think. Let's see here. Oh, and then of course you have the power and the soul stones of the other two stones, which could be anywhere else in this as well. But if we take the original comic book premise of an omnipotent being trying to reform itself after being destroyed, and utilizing Wanda's desire to have this life and family, and manipulating that to draw those powers together, that may be what we're seeing in the birth of Billy and Tommy here. What is also interesting is that apparently Hulkling is supposed to show up in this story. Probably as Billy's boyfriend in a future episode.
Who's Hawkling?
Hulkling, and I'm forgetting his name, but he's basically the son of the original Kree Captain Marvel and the Skrull Queen. So he's a Kree-Skrull hybrid with superhuman strength and shape-shifting abilities. And he, of course, falls in love with Billy in the Young Avengers. So... And we already have another Young Avenger coming into existence in this universe in that of Kate Bishop. So I think there is this idea that they're going to build out a Young Avengers storyline from what we've already established. And if at the end of this we see Billy and Tommy being made real outside of the framework, that may be part of what they create. That reality does get rewritten, because it might even be the idea that one of the purposes of S.W.O.R.D. is to reform those Infinity Stones. That might also, which is also a theory I have, that they knew the Infinity Stones were destroyed, but they also know the Infinity Stones have to be brought back into reality, because essentially it's sort of the idea is they will probably reform eventually anyway. And it would be better if we could have them reformed and then keep them safe and locked away so that no one can access them.
Right, so
that would be the proper thing to do.
Throughout the universe, in the little pockets that they have decided to come into existence.
To make sure that there's not another Thanos that's going to do it before them.
Right. Far out, man.
Yes. But the real interesting aspect in this story is...
Monica Rambeau.
As we say... when the babies are born, and of course there's a lot of fun sitcom tropey stuff in this. You have, the doctor being very old man doctory, But at the end, you get the idea that the Doctor knows he's not going to get to leave. He doesn't get to go to Bermuda.
Yeah.
Like he wants to. And it's because small towns. Which is, at one level, very true, that if you are the Doctor in a small town, you can't ever really leave because someone has to be there for the medical emergencies. So that is something that you actually will see in any kind of story that involves a doctor in a small town, that if they're ever gone, that's when everything goes to heck. But also within this is that idea, that resignation, that he doesn't get to have his own story. He doesn't get to go outside and to have an existence beyond what is being controlled in this little, world within the cornfield, as they say. Epsilon 11 Commander, do you have any thoughts?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly.
So,
okay.
Let's get to talking about Geraldine and how and why she decides to break character and interject and try to reach out to Wanda. What does that imply about her intentions? What was she there to do? Like, what state of mind could she have been in that would have told her to break off the mission? Or was that her mission to try to reach? And she saw like a shortcut to say, I can reach her now. We don't have to go through the rigmarole. I think she's coming through. And when she mentioned Piotr, she was like, this is my opportunity. And then, like, beyond that, Wanda's reaction to it, why does she want to keep the illusion intact? Does that imply that, secretly, maybe even deep down subconsciously, she knows she's creating this whole, so none of it is a surprise. She's playing the part to grieve.
And here's what I'm going to say, because there's so much in this scene that it's very hard to unpack. One thing is, even before this, when Herb and Agnes and Vision are talking, Herb is trying to say she's not. We're all, and he's in his, as has been said, he's in a glitch mode, like when he's cutting through the cement cinder block. He's just not able to stop because he's in a loop.
At first, I got the sense that maybe in sort of another dimension, this place where he's cutting, he's trying to break free. He's trying to cut a door out or something. And obviously that's probably not what he was doing. He was probably glitching, but it felt that way to me. I was like, ooh, what if he's on the other side? We don't know what he's doing, but he thinks he has a way out, or he's lost his mind and thinks he can cut his way out or something.
Maybe.
No, please.
Maybe this is. What if this is all like being monitored and maybe they're all like robots made to. Maybe Hydra or AIM or whatever gave Wanda kind of like this paradise with these robots, and SWORD is trying to break into that to help Wanda because they might know they're trying to trick her into joining them and probably causing a lot of damage.
I mean, that's a possibility.
That sounds about right to me.
Yeah. What I think is an interesting aspect of this, though, is when Agnes is talking about Geraldine, and she says, a woman alone, she doesn't have a family, and then she says she doesn't have a home, which I think is this statement that Geraldine isn't part of the pre-constructed narrative, that she is... that she is an interloper, and that statement that she doesn't have a home, when clearly she says she has a home, she just came from her home where the pipes burst. But the reality is that everyone knows when they go off screen, maybe they cease to exist in some way, but that there's a place for them to go when they're off screen. And they know Geraldine isn't one of those. They know Geraldine isn't someone like us. And this was something someone had pointed out. When Geraldine comes out of Pleasant Hill, she's still dressed as Geraldine. She is still in the period costume. She still looks like that. And one imagines that Which also suggests that there is a physical transformation, that it's not just what the framework was, which was going into a computer-generated simulation with your mind sort of wired up to a computer, that this is a physical entry into...
That's a good point. Now I'm wondering how they entered it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a physical barrier, that a threshold that you have to cross? There might be like a bubble around an actual town.
Yeah, well, and as people have pointed out, that that this kind of, hexagon technology, we've seen it before, that's what was put around Wakanda. So I do think we're looking at a primarily technology-based question here. But I think this is what the red, blue, and green hexagons relate to that we see, is that I believe that relates to the quantum realm. Because if you recall, when we're going to the quantum realm, you get that same red, blue, green cathode ray look to it. Now, I originally thought there was an actual quantum tunnel in this when I saw the previews for that scene, because we see her come out of what looks like this big tube, and I thought it was a quantum tunnel, but I don't think it is in this case. I think that is just her coming out of whatever this new quantum-empowered framework is.
Wait, I have a theory.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what they mean by she doesn't have a home, maybe she might have, like, some form of home, but maybe she doesn't, like, stay there long enough, and she goes back to Sword through the sewer system, because if we remember, we saw the beekeepers come out of the sewer system, and so that might be the only way you're able to breach it, is by going through the sewers.
I like that a lot.
I like that too. The only thing is that we can see that when Geraldine is thrown out, she doesn't go through any path. That it's just she is ejected by Wanda. There's a lot of things meant to give us pause and concern and worry and think. All of the haunted house imagery in this, again, to feed into that idea of Mephisto. There's so much Mephisto imagery that it makes me think they're not going to do Mephisto. It's like there's so much of it. It's like, now you're getting a little on the nose.
Right.
So that's what leads me to like, well, okay, what else could they do the same kind of idea with, but not that? And that's where I'm thinking that the reforming of the Infinity Stones, that Billy and Wiccan, Billy is Wiccan, Billy and Tommy, which is Wiccan and Speed, are the reforming of the Infinity Stones. In fact, the idea that maybe Billy is, if you look at it like, if they break up the Infinity Stones into different people, then, Tommy could be the Tesseract and the Time Stone, and Wiccan could be the Reality Stone and maybe the Power Stone, or the Soul Stone, or the Mind Stone,
Wow.
And it all comes into, like, what's going to come out of this at the end. And possibly we will get a fully formed Vision with that Mind Stone back in his head.
That's great.
Yeah, it works for the story,
Yeah.
And then the other Infinity Stones are wherever they are. And the idea that it was suggested that Wanda actually is, unlike Captain Marvel, has connections to all the Infinity Stones, and that her powers derive from all the Infinity Stones. That because the Mind Stone was in communication with all the other stones, arguably, because it is the Mind Stone, and the stones have a will of their own.
Wait, I just thought of something.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there's this scene where Wanda is, like, kind of using her powers on the Mind Stone, and it explodes. And what if it does, like, a Tesseract thing, where when it explodes, it sends her to her own dimension in her mind?
Yeah, that was in the previews. But then again, we also don't know, is she destroying the stone or recreating the stone? Is this the time flowing backwards or the time flowing forwards? Because, of course, time means whatever we want it to mean. All right, any final thoughts on tonight's episode? Epsilon 11 Commander, our special guest. Final thoughts?
Well, I did notice something where the sword logo on the Beekeeper, when they're doing the preview, it was way harder to see the sword logo than how it was originally sold. Also, another thing, it had a lot of hexagons, and hexagon is the logo of AIM.
Mm-hmm. AIM does has the hexagon logo. That's also the logo of the Hive in Marvel Comics, which is another group of super scientists who are somewhat evil, and also do work with synthezoids because they were the original creators of Adam Warlock. So there's a lot of little things here that we're going to see what the MCU decides to do. They're setting us up with a lot of Easter eggs that are probably some are Easter eggs and some are red herrings. And I think the most important thing to remember now is that they have chucked this full of red herrings like it's a Sabbath brunch. So
I don't think they're gonna do AIM because AIM is not make. They might do AIM, but we know that AIM is not making Adam Warlock.
Well, we think AIM is not.
I mean Hive.
Well, we think that because we think that they've already put Adam Warlock in Guardians of the Galaxy, but that could again just be more red herrings. They're great. You put a red herring with a little schmear on a bagel, it's delish, let me tell you. Anyway, Mozz, any final thoughts from you?
Loving the show so far. The acting is great, and it's fun seeing all these actors sort of try to play the kind of acting that was prevalent in that time. But I must say the one thing I enjoyed more so than a lot of other things in this episode was the performance of the Doctor. Mm-hmm. When he turns around and he's having conversations with people, you really get a sense like he's in that time period, that he's from that piece. He belongs there. That actor was so pitch perfect, note for note, in his delivery. I thought he was really, really good in this episode. That was my favorite part of the episode.
And what I love about him, too, is that he does do great switches from being a comedy foil to being the sad guy at the end when he's like, small towns are real hard to leave. Mm-hmm. And he really sells those lines as a guy who's like, understands, I can be the funny Bermuda baby, old-timey doctor guy, already out of my time in the 60s, but I'm also a human being. And that was really great. One thing I did want to make sure that I made a point of is that one of the things we see with Geraldine is her understanding of the dynamics, that when Wanda does see that things aren't going her way, she will rewind time, and Geraldine tries to do that so that she doesn't. So she says, I said you're a strong woman. Do I need to say it again? Sort of like, do I need to do another take? And I thought that was a really interesting thing because it showed that she was trying to make that work.
She was trying to get Wanda to do it again?
Well, she was trying to get Wanda to think that happened. And essentially, this is the idea that the idea
to recognize that there's another narrative that you're trying to ignore right now.
Well, no, the idea was to try to say, you don't need to rewind me because I'm already rewound. You already did it. You just didn't. She's trying to gaslight Wanda to think that she already did the rewinding scene there. And it's it's a little thing, and she does it. And that may go into that idea that, S.W.O.R.D. doesn't really know. They know what's happening, but not who's in control or why it's happening. Mm. So they know that this time rewinds every time that Wanda starts to get pulled out of this reality. And so when she tries to go back to that reality and act like nothing had happened, that's when Wanda just sees it and knows what reality is and sends her to the cornfield, as it were. But anyway, just a great, another great episode, a really great series. Next episode, the one, because we're recording on Thursday night, so that's going to be dropping at midnight. The next episode, they say it is a perspective shift. Oh. Which means I think we're actually going to get stuff from Monica Rambeau in the SWORD facility. I just saw the ad for it again, because they're running the ads a lot on ABC right now. And they made a point to show the woman's hand holding the remote control that we haven't seen since the first episode. So I think we're going to see who that is. And my prediction, mark my words, that is Gemma Simmons.
I would love that. That'd be great.
I am so certain of it. It's such a pale white hand. It is a black uniform, just like Gemma was wearing all throughout the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that's Gemma Simmons, new head of S.W.O.R.D. The sentient, because, you know, and really, in that sense, the Sentient Weapons Observatory, you know, watching the most dangerous prisoners, that's right in her bailiwick as a superhuman biologist. And it's also, quite frankly, it's probably a real steady job with nice hours because she has kids. So, you know, she can she can be just a few hours away, drive into work, observe the sentient weapons, go home at night. It's a nice, good job for Gemma Simmons. So that's my big prediction for tonight's episode. We'll see if I was right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wait. First, I know I have to do... Oh, gosh. Okay. I'm completely outside of my head here. Because you know why? Because it's so hard to listen to these things sometimes. And that's because, you know, I don't have tweaked audio headsets, Mozz. See, me and...
What are you doing?
You see, I wear headsets, but not tweaked audio headsets. I mean, you're not even wearing headsets at all. And the thing is tweaked audio headsets, they're fantastic headsets. And if you go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate, you'll get a discount on them. So maybe you should go do that. Likewise, take that same coupon code over to huntingkiller.com, use that same coupon code there, and, you know, get a escape room delivered to your house, help Michelle Gray solve a cold case. It'll be fun. It's crazy. And you get a nice savings from this coupon code Southgate. Meanwhile, if none of that interests you, or if it does interest you, but you still want more, because, you know, what is life except more and more and more, as we learned from the Wonder Woman film, go down into our show notes, click on the Amazon link where they will give you more and more again. Costs you nothing, but they know that you were listening to our show when you clicked on it, and that helps out the show, and we appreciate that. While you're there, check out Pod Life, the book. That's the book written by the Southgate Media Group crew here about podcasting, about the life of a podcaster. You just might enjoy it if you like podcasts. You can get it in the hard copy for when society falls, as Lilith Hellfire would say. And also digital download, which, you know, will last until, you know, the power runs out. So that's good, too. Oh. And if they do any of that, Epsilon 11 Commander, how can people find you on social media? Do you have a social media presence?
Oh, yeah, I do. You could subscribe. You don't have to. I don't really post that much. You could subscribe to Toxic Gamer 13. Yeah, that's basically it.
That's on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. He does playthroughs, and he also posts interesting videos, so you might like Toxic Gamer 13. I think he's going places. Mozz Manzoor, if people would like to reach out to you and touch you in a positive way, how can they do so?
Well, they can email me at mozzmanzoor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzoor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me that old-fashioned email way the way our Mozz and Poz once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet things when I feel like it. Possibly the new Batwoman, which I enjoy, but I have to remember that it's on Sunday nights. And DuckTales A Woohoo on Monday nights at 7, if I ever remember when that's on and they have new episodes coming back. At CharlieEsser.CHARLIE. Yes, S-E-R. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality.
For quality.
Bing.
Bing. Thank you, Mozz, and thank you, Epsilon 11 Commander. Ladies and gentlemen, you have listened to another clandestine broadcast describing the horrors that await all of mankind if not for the Agents of S.W.O.R.D. Tune in again next week. And until then, 'nuff said.